Thank you for joining us for All About Disability Etiquette, a training hosted by Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or OOD. OOD is the state of Ohio agency whose mission is to empower Ohioans with disabilities through employment, disability determinations, and independence. OOD helps connect the people of Ohio who have disabilities with resources, support, and opportunities to find and retain meaningful employment. For more information, visit us at ood.ohio.gov. Through this training, we aim to enhance our disability awareness, helping us to remove barriers and create environments where everyone feels valued. To begin, we'll discuss what disability etiquette is and why it is important across various settings. Then we'll share effective communication and interaction strategies for engaging with all individuals, including individuals with disabilities. Finally, we'll wrap up with ways to promote disability inclusion and accessibility in the workplace and community spaces by providing specific and actionable tips. Let's begin with the definition of a disability according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. The ADA defines a person with a disability as an individual who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, such as seeing, hearing, walking, caring for oneself, learning, thinking, and communicating. Let's discuss invisible and visible disabilities. Oftentimes, when we think about disability, we think of the types of disabilities that are apparent or visible to us, such as a person with a physical disability using a wheelchair. But many disabilities are not apparent and are often referred to as invisible. You may not even realize a person has a disability if it's invisible. For example, a person living with depression or anxiety, or a person with a learning disability. Most disabilities are not visible to others. It is estimated that 10% of the United States population has a medical condition that could be considered an invisible disability. You almost certainly have people in your community, coworkers, friends, and others who have a disability, whether you know it or not. That is why it's important to practice disability etiquette during all interactions every day, whether at work or in the community. So what is disability etiquette? Disability etiquette means treating people with disabilities in the same courteous and respectful manner as you would anyone. Building confidence, removing misconceptions, promoting accessibility, and fostering a culture of respect and understanding are all foundational goals of disability etiquette. Training on disability etiquette is an effective way to build a positive understanding of disability and increase confidence in having inclusive interactions. It helps to remove fears and misconceptions that unintentionally create barriers. It provides practical tips for interacting, offering assistance, and recognizing the unique aspects of disability. When we cultivate a welcoming environment, everyone feels included, and that leads to positive impacts, from stronger workplace culture to more inclusive communities. Let's take a closer look. People with disabilities make up the largest minority group in the country and can include anyone. Approximately 1 in 4 adults in the United States reports having a disability. To bring it closer to home, an estimated 1.7 million people in Ohio identify as having a disability. Disability isn't just a statistic. It represents people. People with disabilities are our aunts and uncles, grandparents, parents, children, siblings, neighbors. They are the visitors, guests, and coworkers we interact with every day. Imagine a workplace where everyone's strengths are recognized and everyone feels like they belong. That's the kind of culture we cultivate when inclusion is a priority. A disability inclusive workplace benefits from unique perspectives, problem solving skills, and resilience, qualities often strengthened by the resourcefulness and adaptability required to overcome everyday barriers. Disability inclusive workplaces experience less turnover, more innovation, and higher employee satisfaction. Inclusive practices don't just stop at work, they extend to everyone who interacts with your organization. The Employer Assistance and Resource Network on Disability, or EARN for short, reports that people with disabilities make up one of the largest market segments in the country, with significant purchasing power. People with disabilities are customers, visitors, and guests who want to fully engage in your programs, activities, services, and goods. Ensuring they feel welcome helps attract this valuable market segment, along with their friends and family who support disability inclusive businesses. And overall, this can build brand loyalty and increased revenue. Let's get into some effective communication and interaction techniques that are helpful when engaging with individuals with disabilities, including coworkers, visitors, and guests. First, we will explore 4 simple rules for interactions. Next, we will discuss the types of disabilities and specific considerations that can be helpful. Then we will bring it all together by underscoring the impact these tips can have when incorporated into everyday scenarios. The foundation of disability etiquette is simple. Treat everyone, including individuals with disabilities, as you want to be treated. This applies everywhere, at work, in the community, and in daily interactions. Building on that, here are 4 simple rules to follow. Show respect, be courteous, don't assume, and ask first. Showing respect begins with understanding people with disabilities are people first. It also includes concentrating on the person rather than the disability during interactions. Remember to treat people with disabilities as the independent individuals they are. Next is being courteous. This includes respecting people's bodies and personal space. For example, you shouldn't grab or move people without asking, and avoid touching any of their assistive devices. Being courteous also includes engaging directly with the person with a disability, not with someone else about them. We are all unique in our abilities, preferences, and needs. Disabilities also vary widely in their signs, symptoms, and how they affect people. It is important to not assume someone's wants, likes, needs, or abilities based on appearance, behavior, or assistive devices being used. At times, stigmas and misconceptions may influence our perceptions of people's needs. For example, we may inaccurately equate communication challenges with a lack of understanding, when in reality, the person may just need another moment to think about what you said. Assuming can interfere with autonomy and safety. So, how can this be avoided? This can be avoided by simply asking. If you think someone needs assistance, always ask before helping. Acknowledge and respect their ability to make decisions and judgments on their own, even if they decline your offer to help. If they respond yes, ask, how can I help? The person with the disability knows best how you can provide effective assistance as they manage their disability daily. This brings us to our next topic, language tips. The words we use matter when interacting with individuals with disabilities. Language can help someone feel welcomed and included. There are 2 main approaches to disability-related language, people first and identity first. So let's talk about those terms, review some outdated terms, and offer more inclusive alternatives. People first language emphasizes the person, not the disability. So, for example, you would say person with a disability rather than disabled person. Identity first language focuses on the disability as a source of empowerment and pride. It emphasizes the disability as an important part of the person's identity. Saying the deaf person instead of the person who is deaf is an example of identity first language. If a person's disability isn't relevant to the conversation, there is no need to mention the disability at all. Simply refer to the person as you would anyone else. If you're not sure what language to use, a safe bet is to ask the person what they prefer. And when in doubt, use person first language. There are words that were once considered acceptable but have become outdated. You may ask yourself, how do we make sure we're using language that feels respectful and current? There are outdated terms like handicapped, victim, confined, special, challenged, and able bodied. It's best if you use language such as person with a disability and person without a disability. When talking about an individual, it is always best practice to avoid referencing the disability altogether. Simply refer to the person as you would anyone else. When talking about an environmental feature like parking or seating, it's always best to use the term accessible. For example, we have accessible parking near the main entrance right next to the ramp. Also, it's okay to use everyday phrases such as, let's walk over there, or did you watch the game last night? These are not considered offensive. In this section, we're going to discuss the different types of disabilities and share some specific etiquette and language tips you can use in real life situations, whether at work or in the community. Let's start with physical disabilities. A physical disability may affect how a person moves, senses things, or their coordination. Examples include arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and paraplegia. This can potentially impact a person's ability to move around, lift and carry items, write or type, sit, stand, or walk. People with physical disabilities may use assistive aids like wheelchairs, walkers, or scooters to navigate their surroundings. It's important to treat assistive aids as an extension of the person and ask first before helping or moving a person using an assistive aid. For example, always ask before pushing someone's wheelchair. Also, remember to avoid leaning on or reaching over the aids. Next, practice patience. Individuals using a wheelchair or a walker may need more time to navigate. Lastly, for long conversations, sit at eye level. This makes the interaction more comfortable and respectful. Now let's share disability inclusive language for physical disabilities. First, avoid using terms suggesting something is wrong with a person, such as victim or spastic. Avoid phrases like confined to a wheelchair. Terms like confined and bound indicate an inability to move when actually it's the opposite. A person uses an assistive device in order to move in the environment. Instead, use person first language. For example, person who uses a wheelchair. When possible, it's best to use language that does not reference a disability at all. Now let's talk about intellectual and developmental disabilities. Intellectual or developmental disabilities are conditions that are usually present at birth and impact a person's physical, emotional, and/or cognitive development. Intellectual disabilities affect intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior, including everyday social and life skills. Developmental disabilities are a broader category of often lifelong disabilities that can be intellectual, physical, or both. Intellectual disabilities are a subset of developmental disabilities. However, not all developmental disabilities impact a person's cognitive or intellectual functioning. Cerebral palsy is a type of developmental disability. Down syndrome is an intellectual disability. When interacting with people with developmental and/or intellectual disabilities, here are a few tips. First, be direct when giving information and asking questions. Subtle hints may take longer for the person to process. It is helpful to practice patience and give a person time to respond during conversations. It may take the person time to formulate a response. And sometimes it may be helpful to repeat or rephrase the question or thought. During these instances, remember it is okay to have breaks in conversations. Let's discuss a scenario about respectful interactions with a person with an intellectual disability. Imagine you are volunteering at the county fair at the food stand. A customer, Jordan, is having difficulty understanding all the menu options. What is the best way to respond? Should you A, stop talking to Jordan and ask his friend to order for him? Or B, ask Jordan how he prefers to communicate? If you chose B, you're correct. It can be helpful to ask Jordan how he prefers to communicate. For some people, providing information in the form of pictures can enhance understanding. Maybe it would be helpful to show Jordan a menu that has pictures and descriptions of the menu options. Lastly, be open to communicating in various ways. This can include providing information in the form of pictures, like we just discussed, or when asked to repeat a question, try explaining it in another way or providing an example. Getting a point across and ensuring understanding is what is important, not the exact method of communication. As with all disabilities, words matter. Avoid using offensive and outdated terms such as impaired, slow, stupid, or the R word. Remember, individuals with disabilities are people first. Instead, in every interaction, use language that focuses on the person, not the disability or outdated stereotypes. Let's move on to hearing disabilities. Hearing disabilities, such as hard of hearing, deafness, and deafblindness, cover a range of hearing loss and can be caused by various diseases or injuries, including viral infections and excessive noise exposure. Some people are born with hearing loss, while others are affected gradually. Chronic conditions such as diabetes and high blood pressure can affect hearing. Additionally, some people may experience hearing loss as part of the natural aging process. Let's discuss another scenario. Imagine you arrive at a training where one person has their back to you. You say hello, but they don't respond. They might be hard of hearing. How do you get their attention? A, shout. B, flick the light switch. Or C, wave your hand. If you answered B, flick the light switch, or C, wave your hand, you are correct. To get the attention of a person who is deaf or hard of hearing, it's best to use a visual signal, such as waving your hands or flicking a light switch if they are not facing you. Shouting is never a good choice. You can also try tapping on a table or creating a vibration by stomping your foot lightly on the ground. You'll also want to face the person when talking. If the person is speech reading, enunciate clearly, place yourself in ample lighting, and keep your mouth clear of obstructions. Another etiquette tip is to avoid assuming how someone prefers to communicate. Not all deaf people communicate using sign language. Some individuals may use speech reading or prefer writing, and preference may change based on the environment. For example, a person may use speech-to-text software for a quick ticket purchase, but prefer an interpreter for a longer event. There are times tools or a service is used to communicate, such as using an interpreter, a communication board, or an assistive listening device. Be patient and communicate using their preferred method. The last etiquette tip is to talk directly to the person rather than a companion or interpreter. Avoid saying, "Tell him I said." Rather, speak naturally to the person. It can also be helpful to ask the individual where they would like the interpreter positioned so they have a clear view of both the interpreter and any visuals. This ensures effective communication. The correct terminology. when referring to someone who has hearing loss is deaf or hard of hearing, not hearing impaired. Many people who are deaf or hard of hearing do not consider themselves as having a disability, and by using that word, it implies that something is wrong with them. People who communicate with sign language consider themselves a cultural and linguistic minority. When interacting, it's generally preferred to say deaf person or hard of hearing person. This is identity first language, which many in the deaf community prefer. This is why it can be helpful to ask an individual about their preference for language. Now let's move on to visual disabilities. People often confuse visual disabilities with blindness, but not everyone with a visual disability is totally blind. Many people with visual disabilities have some usable sight. Blindness or low vision can be caused by various conditions and diseases, such as macular degeneration or glaucoma. Some of these occur at birth, while others are progressive and get worse over time. Injuries to the eye can also affect vision. Let's learn tips for interacting with individuals who are blind or have low vision. When approaching someone with a visual disability, it is helpful to announce yourself. Also, let the person know when you are leaving a space. If you wish to shake hands, you can say something like, "May I shake your hand?" And this will let the person know to extend their hand for you to take. Remember, most people who are blind or have low vision can hear just fine, so there's no need to shout or raise your voice during conversations. Always ask before assistance rather than assuming needs or preferences. For example, it's okay to ask the person if they would like assistance moving to another location, but never pull someone by their arm or cane. If you are asked to help, let the person take your arm and be sure to alert the person to any obstacles, such as stairs or an extension cord on the floor. Let the person know when they have reached a chair or doorway. Also, refrain from petting a service animal or moving an assisted aid, as this could be dangerous for the person or the animal. Lastly, promote a safe environment. Keep drawers, doors, and cabinets fully open or fully closed to prevent an injury. Instead of saying the blind or the sightless, please use person who is blind or has low vision. It's okay to use everyday phrases like, "Do you see what I mean?" or "Did you watch the game last night?" or "See you next week." These are common and not considered offensive. Let's move on to our next disability type. Some disabilities fall under the category of neurodivergence, which refers to variations in brain function outside the typical range. Neurodivergence can affect communication, social interaction, and processing. As with all disabilities, there is a range of abilities, behaviors, and limitations. Autism spectrum disorder, epilepsy, and sensory processing disorders are examples. Let's review some etiquette tips. It's important to ignore repetitive behaviors, as you would ignore someone twirling their hair with their fingers. Instead, focus on the unique person, not the behavior. Presume competence and allow extra time for processing and responding. And note, social cues may differ. Someone may make blunt or frank comments, so don't take it personally. For language best practices, avoid phrases like "everyone is a little ADHD" and labels such as high or low functioning, mild or severe. Instead, use descriptive, strengths-based language, such as "needs support with organization" or "works well with structured guidance." These phrases focus on practical support and not the disability. Now let's cover mental health disabilities. Mental health disabilities can affect a person's thinking, behavior, emotions, or a combination of these. They are real health conditions, just like cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. There is a wide range of mental health disabilities, and they affect people differently. Examples include anxiety, depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. Here are some helpful etiquette tips when interacting with people with mental health disabilities. Don't patronize, condescend, or make decisions for someone. And don't make assumptions about what a person wants, likes, or needs. Don't blame the person. A person with a disability can't just snap out of it, and it would be insensitive and ineffective to tell the person to do so. Focus on the person instead of the disability. And if you are aware of a person's mental health disability, you should never disclose this to others without permission. Avoid using derogatory terms such as paranoid, crazy, insane, and psycho. For example, saying she was crazy after helping a visitor or guest perpetuates stigma and can harm people with mental health conditions. Instead, use neutral, respectful language, such as she seemed upset. Let's consider this graphic showing the different disability types and some examples we have discussed throughout this training. Let's go back to a concept we touched on earlier, visible and invisible disabilities. Sometimes when people think of a disability, they picture what's visible, like someone using a wheelchair or white cane. But remember, many disabilities are not visible and are often referred to as invisible disabilities. For example, mental health conditions like anxiety or PTSD may be triggered by a loud noise, or a person with low vision may have difficulty reading a menu in a dimly lit restaurant. What happens when we remove the examples of disabilities that are invisible or not readily apparent from our graphic? Many of the examples we have included earlier are no longer represented. The screen no longer displays neurodivergence or mental health disabilities. Some examples of physical and sensory disabilities are missing as well. Now the graphic only shows disabilities that are more visible, like physical disabilities, such as paraplegia and multiple sclerosis, developmental disabilities like cerebral palsy, intellectual disabilities such as Down syndrome, hearing disabilities such as deafness and deafblindness, and visual disabilities such as blindness. So what does this mean? It means you may interact with coworkers, visitors, and guests who have disabilities you can't see because they aren't apparent or visible. That's why it's important to use the disability etiquette and awareness tips we shared today in every interaction so everyone feels welcome and included. Let's take a moment to reflect on the graphic showing the different types of disabilities we discussed earlier. These words, coworker, uncle, aunt, daughter, sister, community member, grandparent, friend, mother, neighbor, brother, and son, remind us that people with disabilities are part of our everyday lives in many roles. We've talked about disability etiquette and communication tips. Now let's take it a step further. In this final section of the training, we're going to talk about how inclusion goes beyond individual interactions and into the spaces where we work and gather. We'll look at what makes an environment accessible and welcoming for everyone. That means being aware of the accessibility features your workplace or venue offers and learning simple ways staff can create and maintain accessible environments for everyone. Accessibility features come in many forms. They're not just ramps and entrances. They also include tools like sensory kits and power mobility device charging stations, services like sign language interpretation, technology like assistive listening systems, policies and procedures like permitting service animals, and aspects of the environment like accessible parking and elevators. These features make it possible for everyone to fully experience a space, whether they're there to work, learn, or enjoy an event. As staff, it's helpful to know three things. First, what accessibility features your venue offers. This helps you answer questions when someone calls to plan their visit. For example, if there's a call to ask questions about the availability of a sensory space, you'll know what's available. Second, where accessibility features are located. Visitors may ask where the accessible entrance or assistive devices are, and you'll want to guide them confidently. Third, how to assist with accessibility features. This could be as simple as helping to dim the lights in the sensory room. When you know what's available, where it is, and how to help, you make it easier for everyone to plan their visit and have a positive experience. Every venue is different, and not all spaces have the same accessibility features, but here's the good news. Everyone can play a role in making environments more accessible. One simple way is to move or rearrange furniture so people have room to participate comfortably. For example, you might slide a chair closer to the front for someone who speech reads, or remove a chair at a table so a coworker who uses a wheelchair can join the group for lunch. Another easy tip is to help reach or retrieve items, like grabbing something from the top shelf for an individual using a wheelchair. You can also remove barriers that get in the way. Push in chairs after meetings, straighten areas, keep aisles clear of carts, decorations, or anything that sticks out and makes navigation harder. Communication matters too. Have a plan for communicating with people in a way that works best for them. Sometimes that's as simple as keeping a pen and paper handy for writing notes. And don't forget about weather-related barriers. Shovel sidewalks or mop up wet floors and make sure entrances are safe and slip-free. Throughout this training, we discussed the importance of disability etiquette within work and community settings. We explored effective communication techniques for fostering inclusive interactions with everyone, including individuals with disabilities. We finished with ways to promote disability inclusion and accessibility in the workplace and community spaces. The last thought we would like to leave you with is this: treat everyone as you would want to be treated. Please contact us here at Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities for resources and trainings about disability inclusion and creating accessible environments.